Hyperscan video game system is here, featuring X-Men. It's where collectible card games meet video games. Scan your character, battle and gain power, rescan to save the power permanently back to your card. Hyperscan video game system with one controller and X-Men game pack. Other games coming soon, sold separately, rated E10 plus to teen.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Classic Gaming Brothers. I'm Seth.
And I'm Zach.
And we are the Classic Gaming Brothers.
We are the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's right.
That is right.
Well, it's certainly been a hot one.
It's a hot one.
We're going to comment on the weather, which won't be relevant for another couple of months, but then it'll be relevant again. Anyway, we did get a nice email from Andy thanking us for the episodes, and we thank him for listening.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andy. We're glad you appreciated the episodes that we did. Hopefully we did them justice. And if not, I'm glad you didn't tell us that we didn't do them justice.
That's right. I imagine Andy prescribes to the, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything. That's why his emails are so short to us.
He just says, hello, and then he ends the email.
That's right. Better than producer Doug, who just puts in a large capital H.
He's been sending us other letters, too. I think we got to start printing those out and maybe coordinating them into a sentence.
Oh, do you think that the letters that he says after each other go back to the letter that he said beforehand?
I'm not sure. I haven't figured it out yet. I thought so, but then there was a Q that he slipped in there, which might either just be testing us or it's not the word I'm thinking he's spelling.
True. For a second, I thought he threw in a Q like a line.
No. He sent actually a picture of John Delancey.
Oh, okay.
As Q from Star Trek.
Oh, so instead of sending letters, he sends us pictures that represent letters?
I think he's going by character names, not actors' names.
Anyway, it's Weird Intro Wednesday, I guess. Which is funny because we do occasionally release episodes on Wednesdays, but they're not weird. They all are weird. Anyway, Zach, what have you been playing? Tell me about another Doctor Who game.
Well, Seth, you're right. I have been playing another Doctor Who game. I've been playing Doctor Who The Eternity Clock, released in 2012 for PC, PS3, and PlayStation Vita by Supermassive Games. I've been playing the PC version, which was available on Steam. I don't know if it's still available on Steam. I haven't checked. It might have been delisted, though. It's a side-scrolling platformer puzzler where you can play as both the 11th Doctor, as portrayed by Matt Smith, or River Song, as portrayed by Alex Kingston. River being this complicated companion of the Doctor's who the Doctor met in her future. So it was the first time he ever met her, but she knew who he was. And that's kind of how their relationship plays out. Anyway, in the story, the Doctor and River must stop a thing called the Eternity Clock. And on the way of stopping this thing, they have to deal with Cybermen, Daleks, the Silence, and the Silurians. And as opposed to the adventure games, which I talked about one of them last week, this one is more platformer and puzzler heavy. You have to kind of coordinate with the other character, and you switch between characters to do this. So, for example, one puzzle might have to be solved in one time period, and the other character has to do something in a previous time period to get that thing solved. Kind of an innovative way of doing it, I think, and it definitely is an interesting game. Overall, I mean, it's a fun Doctor Who game. I don't know if it's a fun game, but I enjoyed what I've played, and it's nice that it's on Steam, so I can still play it, as opposed to a bunch of other Doctor Who games, which you have to hunt down to play if you want to. But Seth, what about you? What have you been playing?
Whenever I hear of the enemy, the Silence, I think of that game that we played where you have to be really silent.
Oh, yes. This is not how they work. The Silence in Doctor Who, they look like gray aliens, so they're very tall and they got bulbous heads. And whenever you look at them and then you look away, you forget that you've seen them. And that's how they work. So the way they exist is that you never actually remember ever seeing one, but they can influence you in the time that they talk to you, or they could hurt you if they wanted to. But the way they are introduced in the show is that they've always been around and that they've been influencing history by seeping in kind of subliminal messages.
You can only interact with if you see them?
They can always interact with you. You can only interact with them when you see them, but the moment you look away, you forget you saw them.
And the Weeping Angels, they will only not interact if you look at them, but if you look away, they will be able to interact.
Yes. The other difference is that you will remember when you saw a weeping angel.
That's true. But have the Silence and the Weeping Angels ever been in the same episode?
I don't think they have.
You can't look at one and you have to look at the other one.
No, I don't think there's ever been a scenario like that. That would be fun though.
It'd be like a lot of like who you're looking at now.
What would be really weird is a silent angel. You have to look at it so it doesn't move, but the moment you look away, you forget.
And then it kills you.
Well, weeping angels don't kill you, but it's a complicated thing they do, so I don't want to explain it.
That's fair. They just cry. Anyway, I've been playing Space Haven, which was developed and published by Bug Bite Ltd. And released into early access May of 2020. So it's been in early access for a little while. But it's one of those games that's pretty much in early access just to continue to garner the benefit of being in early access and gaining the feedback, and where like they still haven't hit their roadmap, but like it's still a pretty feature complete game, in my opinion. You embark on a space voyage with your crew, and you're off searching for a new home, and you get to build spaceships tile by tile, kind of like if you were building a coaster in Roller Coaster Tycoon, except it's a spaceship. And the people who work on that spaceship were like guests in Roller Coaster Tycoon, maybe just a little smarter, but I mean a little smarter. It's very much like if you took the game RimWorld, where you have like people that you're influencing. You don't control the people that are the crew. You have to influence them. And you took the colony simulator of RimWorld and you just put it in space. That is Space Haven. It's a fun game. I have a crew of 4 on my ship that I'm playing right now, and the only name that really jumps out at me is Albie, and that's because when we boarded a ship, Albie got shot, and then he had to be carried out. He got better. He definitely got better. But it's an interesting game where you have to keep track of like gas in the ship, because ships are contained, so you don't want to necessarily have them open because it's space outside, but you may have like an item that you can build called the recycler, and it generates toxic gas, and you need it to salvage things, and you need salvage in order to continue to get building blocks and stuff like that. And the recycler creates a lot of noxious gas. So then you have to get like scrubbers, and you have to make sure that they're in the room. Everything can't be in too big of rooms, because then you're like, every place it is, you need to maintain the heat and the electrical and all that in every location. So like if you make your ship massive, parts of it will just freeze. And so then you have to build like heaters throughout the ship. So generally you want to make the ship as contained as possible. And I still like to have it like as aesthetically pleasing as well. But so I have a ship, and we just built I'm in the beginning of the game, and we're building like the warp cores to be able to teleport or warp off to a new location. But it's a fun game. They have like little work schedules, and you get to control what their work schedules are, make sure that they have a place to chill and drink their coffees and relax, and make sure that it's pleasing. They also one of the things that I liked about it a lot is that there's like a comfort level. And so in order to be in like a bed, you need to have a place that's comfortable for them to sleep, like a bed in a bedroom. And then you also don't want to put the bedroom next to like the engines, because like nobody will sleep with that. So you want to keep your like bedrooms isolated and stuff like that. And so I just thought it was kind of cool building out like this type of like little environment, and it's a pretty fun game with kind of very RimWorld-ish style of art. So it's kind of blocky, and not blocky, but like you can build each thing individual blocks to get to a full picture. So it's a lot of fun. I like it. It's a Space Haven.
That sounds cool. Well, today we're talking about something that we haven't talked about in a while, which is a obscure failed console. We're talking about the Mattel Hyperscan. This was another thing that was on our list, along with Kingdoms of Alamore, that we just have not gotten to. I don't know how old this note was, as I didn't put a potential episode number next to it. Judging from how long ago the Kingdoms of Alamore episode was supposed to be for, I'm going to say this was probably a few years ago that I put this note down.
We thought it would be interesting to talk about, but not as interesting to write about.
Before we get into the history of the Hyperscan, Seth, do you have any memories of the Hyperscan?
No.
So I actually kind of do. I don't know if I knew someone that owned one. I feel like I might have, but I might be like making that memory up in my head. I do remember seeing them on display at Toys R Us. I remember them being for sale. I think when I saw them for sale, they were already pretty discounted in price. Like I don't remember seeing them brand new. I don't remember ever wanting one. And I also remember the commercials. I remember seeing one commercial at least for them. They used to air, I think on Cartoon Network. I might be wrong. I might have to double check that. But I definitely remember seeing them air commercials for them.
It's the new Hyperscan interactive game system, including the X-Men game. It's where collectible card games meet video games. Scan your character into the game. Battle. Rescan. Your card is now more powerful for your next battle. Over 100 cards you can collect for even more power. Hyperscan interactive game system with one controller and X-Men game pack. Other games and booster packs each sold separately. Rated E10 plus to teen. And available now, new Ben 10 game.
HyperscanGamer.com.
The Hyperscan is kind of a bizarre little piece of tech. So to get into it, let's talk about Mattel. We previously talked about Mattel already when we covered the Intellivision. As a quick refresher though, back in the 70s and the early 80s, the main company that dominated the gaming market was Atari. And competition was plentiful. Basically everyone and their mother made a video game console at some point, and one of those was Mattel, who produced the Intellivision. Production on the Intellivision began as far back as 1977, around the time that Atari officially released the VCS, later known as the 2600. Mattel, primarily a toy company at the time, wanted to develop a game console that had better graphics than Atari, and they also wanted a hook to their gameplay that kept players coming back. One of these hooks would be the weird controller they had, which had a dial and 9 buttons on it that made it look like a telephone. Mattel wasn't unfamiliar with electronic games. They developed a small line of handheld games like Auto Race back in 1976, and of course they had their sports titles like Football, which came out in 1977. But the Intellivision would be their first TV game console. To prepare for building a game console, Mattel had to negotiate a chipset, so they worked with National Semiconductor. At the same time, it was suggested by a consulting firm that they should go with General Instrument to develop their desired chipset. Mattel chose National Semiconductor, but National Semiconductor took a long time to provide the chipset. So ultimately, Mattel would basically end their contract with National and go with GI instead.
Once the chipset was approved, Mattel put together a team that designed the controllers and the rest of the hardware. In 1978, David Rolfe of APH Technological Consultant, with the H being lowercase and the AP being uppercase, was able to create an onboard executive control system that allowed people to program the first few games for the machine. Fun fact, the people who programmed these games were a group of Caltech summer student employees, meaning that they were smart and underpaid. Mattel introduced the Intellivision officially in 1979 at the Las Vegas Computer Electronics Show, or CES. The original design was presented as a home computer with a keyboard add-on. Mattel was able to work with distributors like Sylvana and Sears. Oh, Sylvana. We had a TV though, Sylvana, didn't we?
Yeah.
To market their own branded versions of Intellivision, and were beginning to deliver consoles to Gottschalk department stores and JCPenney's. The system officially hit the shelves nationwide by the mid-1980s with a packing game like Las Vegas Poker and Blackjack. Great packing game. At the time of release, there were 10 cartridges available. The system retailed for the suggested price of $275 or $1,136 adjusted on launch in 1980. That's right. Mattel Intellivision came out with one game that was Blackjack Poker Game, and you could play it for the low price of $1,100. Just buy some cards. I'm sure they weren't $275 back then. I guess maybe you needed some friends. I think you still needed friends to play with this anyway.
Not in single player mode.
Along with the Mattel version of the system, there was also the Sylvana branded machine, the Sears Super Video Arcade variant, and a Radio Shack Tandyvision one. These systems all functioned identical to the standard Mattel Intellivision, but some lacked the Mattel Electronics logo when the game booted up.
Mattel wouldn't stop at just one game console. In fact, in 1983, they released a home computer that was more targeted toward games called the Aquarius. The Aquarius was fairly simple. It's a Zilog Z80 based system that had 4 kilobytes of RAM and would also be fairly cheap on launch. It retailed for $160, or adjusted for inflation, that's $525 today. The Aquarius was released in June of 1983, and it was discontinued in October of 1983. That's right, it lasted 4 months on the market. It did pretty poorly in terms of reception, with most people noting how outdated it felt when compared to its competitors, such as the Commodore 64. In fact, within Mattel's own programming division, they adopted a slogan that never made it outside of the programming division: Aquarius, a system for the 70s.
I mean, it definitely has a name that sounds like it's a system for the 70s.
And it definitely had the processing power of a system from the 70s. So with the Aquarius being a failure, Mattel would stay away from video games for a bit, and they stuck to what they knew best: toys. Through the 1990s into the early 2000s, Mattel would secure the licenses for some of the most major toys, and they became a huge name in the toy industry, being a rival to Hasbro and Galoob. It was thanks to brands like Barbie, Hot Wheels, and He-Man that helped push Mattel to be the second most successful toy company, second only to Lego, and they are still the second most successful toy company to this day.
Second still to Lego.
Yeah, Lego is always number one because it's Lego. Honestly, I don't think anything could topple Lego.
Lego's also, unlike Mattel and Hasbro, privately owned.
Lego also is incredibly litigious.
Yes, they are.
Hey, is that a brick that has 2 circles inside of it? That's ours.
Not anymore, I don't think.
Oh yeah, didn't they lose that patent or something like that?
I think that's finally why we're seeing like fantasies and all those weird freaking off brands. With the IPs under their name and with some experience in the digital market, Mattel would try to revive their digital presence in the early 2000s, which was when everyone was trying to revive their digital presence, and when they decided that they needed to release the Mattel Hyperscan. The Hyperscan is a fairly interesting system that nobody asked for. It came about during a time when other toy companies began to release video game technology to capitalize on the Nintendo's Wii. The Wii was largely marketed as a family-friendly and with toy-like qualities, so competitors were bound to happen, such as Zavix, another system that nobody asked for, and that utilized motion controls. The Hyperscan wouldn't use motion controls, though. No, everybody else was doing that. But it would use a hook to differentiate itself from the masses, and that was RFID technology. Same technology that credit cards use?
Yeah.
The console's name, Hyperscan, comes from the fact that it had 13.56 megahertz radio frequency identification reader that could scan cards that you swipe over the console. The games for the system came with a CD containing the base game, and the cards would add elements to the game. This also meant that Mattel could sell booster packs outside of their games, because if there's one thing that I want is a real-life loot box, so that I don't know what the hell I'm going to add to my game that I still have to pay full retail value for.
Now, the machine itself used a Sun Plus SPG 290, which was a system on a chip. A fun fact about the Sun Plus SPG 290 is that it gets used a lot on pirated video game consoles. It is a frequent flyer on unlicensed material, and the Hyperscan is one of the few officially licensed things that use that chipset. It also contained 16 megabytes of DDR SD RAM, and it was pretty physically lightweight. It was like literally lightweight, largely thanks to the fact that the system on a chip technology allowed for Mattel Mattel to not have a lot of internal hardware, also, which helped keep the price low. And it was really low. It retailed at $69.99, which adjusted for inflation is about $111. Games were sold for $19.99, adjusted $31, and booster packs sold for about $10, adjusted $15. The system came packed in with an X-Men game, and that came with 6 cards. And there was at least 1 or 2 booster packs available for most of the games. They planned for more booster packs, not all of them released. There are also only a handful of games for the Hyperscan. X-Men, which was a 2D fighting game similar to Street Fighter, but with various X-Men characters. It was the only Hyperscan game to be rated T for teens. You pick an X-Men character or a Brotherhood of Mutants character, and you fight against each other to either fight Magneto or Professor X. There was Interstellar Wrestling League, a 2v2 fighting game similar to Clay Fighter but with aliens. The game was about a character who has the great name of Idaho Jones, and he decides that he's going to challenge the toughest fighters in the solar system so he can see who deserves to wear the IWL Championship belt. You choose either a face or a heel. Now, for those who aren't familiar with wrestling terms, a face is a person who takes a good guy persona, and a heel is a person who takes a villainous persona. There's also Spider-Man, a side-scrolling platformer that was loosely based off of Spider-Man 3, which was due to be released in 2007. This game features different scenes that basically recreate sequences from the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. So there are some sequences from Spider-Man 3, such as Peter having the black suit, but 2 sequences in particular are from Spider-Man 1, where you fight the Green Goblin, and Spider-Man 2, where you dodge things being thrown by Dr. Octopus. There was another 2D side-scrolling platformer called Marvel Heroes, where you just play as different Marvel characters, and you have to fight off against various villains. And the way this one worked is that you picked a villain that you were going to fight, and then you basically fight different henchmen until you get to that villain, and then you 1v1 them. And lastly, there was Ben 10. This was also a side-scrolling platformer, and based on the hit Cartoon Network television show, at least at the time, called Ben 10, where you play as the main character, Ben Tennyson, who is a boy that obtained a alien device called the Omnitrix, which looks like a really fancy watch, and it allows him to morph into 10 different superpowered alien beings. And yeah, that's all the games. I literally just told you the entire library of the Hyperscan.
Wow. With that huge catalog of options and with the low retail of the games, how did it do? How did the Hyperscan do? It completely demolished the Wii in an alternate timeline, but it sold poorly and was critically panned. According to the Game Console 2.0, a photographic history from Atari to Xbox published in 2021, about 30,000 units would sell. So with a little bit of just back of the napkin math, the entire life of the Hyperscan sold 30,000 units, and the Nintendo Wii would sell triple that in its first day easily.
Yeah, makes sense.
Off to the races, the Hyperscan was. People complained about everything, and the people complaining were people who actually bought it. So 30,000 people were complaining about it. That's a concentrated amount of complaints because the people who did complain about it didn't buy it. And they complained about the controls, the outdated 2D graphics, the poor design, the small library, and the cards that you used. Towards the end of its life, the system dropped from $69.99, and they just took off the 6 and made it $9.99, with games retailing for $1.99 and the cards selling for 99 cents. In 2006, Mattel discontinued the system entirely and canceled any upcoming games or card releases.
I think if you look at the Hyperscan and you ask why did it fail, it's obvious why it failed. I mean, it's a low-powered system that was competing with things like the Wii and the Xbox and such. I mean, these were all 2D platformer or 2D fighting games when you were going against 3D games like Mario Galaxy. But also, if you think about it for a second, all these games had booster packs, right? And to play these games as best as you can, you needed the cards. Looking at Ben 10 as just an example, there were a total of 80 cards that were available for Ben 10. 6 cards are included. 74 cards had to be acquired by purchasing booster packs. Each pack cost what? $10? So basically, you would pay $20 for a game and then $130 for all of the booster packs if you wanted them, meaning each game is closer to being about $150 for a game. You were paying more for the game than you were paying for the console. And that is not a great business model, at least at that time. It's a great business model now for a lot of companies, because a lot of companies will microtransaction the heck out of their games. But I think Mattel might have been a little too early on the microtransaction whole thing. I think they had this idea that they could capitalize on the trading card game market, and they just could not tap it. I think they were looking for something like, oh, we're going to be like rolling in that Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon money, and they're like nowhere near that money.
I think that they were throwing something at the wall, and it definitely didn't stick. Not only did they not sell enough units to really warrant it to go on, also I watched some videos of them playing, like I saw somebody playing the X-Men game, and it looked just like a janky fighter game. Like a janky fighter game that you could play in a web browser in 2006.
Yeah, for sure. A fun fact, though, if for some reason you desperately wanted a Hyperscan today, they're not super expensive. They're actually, I see them listed, and they are about the same price as you would have gotten one new back in the day. So they go for about $60 used, meaning that they have decreased in price over the years. Also, you can get a complete set of the X-Men booster packs for $25, completely unopened.
Do you know who should have these?
Who?
The people at Mattel who decided to curse this planet with the Hyperscan. We should just ship them all off to those people and they can sit on them.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that will do it for our Hyperscan episode. Before we end this episode off, we're going to get into our retro rewinds. Seth had me play a game called Whip Rush for the Sega Genesis. It was developed by Vic Tokay and released in 1990, and it's a pretty generic space shooter. I thought it was fun. It had some really good music, but after playing Truxton just a few episodes ago, I think Truxton is better. Overall, Whip Rush holds up if you like space shooters, but there are certainly better ones like Truxton. Truxton is the better space shooter. Next week, Seth, you can play Toy Story for the Super Nintendo.
Great. I'm excited to play that. Zach had me play Gauntlet 2 for the Game Boy. Gauntlet 2 was originally released for arcades in 1986 and then ported to a number of systems, including the Game Boy in 1991. It was a pretty good game, actually. I got through a couple of levels. There were odd things, like in the first level, I just walked across it and I got to the exit and it was a giant dungeon. I don't know why I need to explore the rest of the dungeon because I just had to walk and exit, and I don't know if there's like an RNG that plays out to place the exit in different parts of the dungeon. Entirely possible. The game plays well and it's impressive for what they could do for the Game Boy. It's a reminder that it's a Game Boy game and it's not 1991 anymore. So if you're wanting to play some Gauntlet games, there are plenty to choose from that you could play on more up-to-date handhelds, or if you want to spend that time, you can also head back onto episode 194 where we talk about Gauntlet at length. I think they did a good job for what it was, and for the Game Boy, I think it still like holds up to a point that like I played it and I don't hate myself for playing it, which is hard for me to say for a lot of the games that Zach has me play. I think overall, if you have no other options, it kind of holds up, but it's only not holding up because of its dated being older. Next week, Zach, you could play Discworld for MS-DOS.
Great, I will. Well, thank you everyone for listening to today's episode. If you ever had the opportunity or misfortune of playing a Mattel Hyperscan, let us know. You can email us at classicgamingbrothers@gmail.com. We are available wherever podcasts can be found, be it Podbean, iTunes, or iHeartRadio. We're available on social media. Check us out. Look us up, Classic Gaming Brothers or CG Brothers Pod. We're available on our website, classicgamingbrothers.com. And of course, we're available on YouTube, Classic Gaming Brothers. With that, Seth, am I forgetting anything?
Don't play games like my brother.
And don't play games like my brother.
I've been Seth.
And I've been Zach.
And we've been the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's right.
That's right.